dear friends. Today we're going to talk about the period between the Old Testament and the New Testament. But I'm going to start with a little story about some Australian sailors who were in London, and they had gotten off their ship and gone ashore, and they had gone to drinking. They were pretty drunk when the bar closed, and they stumbled out into the street, and they looked at each other, and one of them said, "Where are we?" And the other said, "Mate, we don't know where we are. So how are we going to find out?" They looked down the street, and out of the fog came a man all dressed up, and the fog was thick, so they couldn't see his medals and the insignia on his uniform. So they asked him, "Hey, mate, where are we?" And the man replied, "Do you know who I am?" One of the sailors said to each others, "We don't know where we are, and he doesn't know who we are, who he is. We are in a mess." And so here we are. When we start to talk about the period between the Old and New Testament, a lot of us don't know where we are, and we don't know who we are. We know that Malachi ends the Old Testament, and then 400 years go by before the New Testament begins. And where are we? What's happening? We call those the 400 silent years, but God was not silent at all during this time. Galatians 4:4 says, "But when the time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under law." When the time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under law. So we know that God was preparing a particular time for his Son to be born, and it was when that time was ripe, when that time had fully come, that Jesus came. So what was God doing to prepare the way for his Son to come into this world? Well, we left with the Persians in charge. Daniel's writing about them. Daniel is he's serving the king of Persia. He's over there in Persia at the time that the Old Testament ends, or very shortly before. And the Persians kept power for 200 years after Malachi wrote. For 200 years they were in control. That's a long time, brothers and sisters. Not 400 years, but it's a long time. Sometimes we look at that and they say, well, they weren't in power very long. They were in power a long time. 200 years. From our point of view, it would be back to 1980. No, I'm sorry, 1900. Well, I am confused. Anyway, you figure it out. What happened with after the Persian Empire began to lose its power, there arose a man in Macedonia called Philip, and Philip thought he would go out and conquer the world. Well, he came close to it, but he died. And his son, whom we refer to as Alexander the Great, arose then, and he began to conquer the world. Now, Alexander was a Greek, or he considered himself a Greek. He was truly a Macedonian. He thought everything Greek was superior to everything that was anything else. So as he went conquering, he imposed upon the people and taught the people his culture and his language. So his language was Greek. So in the time of Alexander and afterwards, Greek became a language that was used all over the civilized world. The culture also, the way people dressed, the way the kind of food they ate, the decorations of their homes, everything became Greek. And it lasted for a long time. Now, Alexander only lived to the age 33, died the same age as Jesus died. But he had conquered the known world by that time. Now, when he died, he had no sons. Daniel tells us that he was the big horn, and that big horn was broken off, and 4 little horns came up, and we'll talk about that next time.